All right, welcome everybody to our third webinar from the RAD family. Today we're going to talk about a topic that has spanned my life through my professional life on Wall Street, my life as a college student, and now this kind of crazy unbundled career life that I'm living as an entrepreneur and blogger. And it's all about networking and relationship building. So without any further ado, I'm going to share my screen and we're going to get this party started. And like I said, I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes and then we'll do Q&A for 15, 20 minutes. And so here goes the screen share. Of course. Whoops, sorry. Stop share. Let me just get the right screen share going. Okay. What the heck is going on? There we go. All right, here we go. How to network with kindness and generosity. So, networking gets such a bad rap. It's so freaking transactional. It feels slimy. You feel like you're sitting in the corner of a conference, like just looking for, like, acting like that weird person trying to make friends. But I'm here to tell you that it doesn't have to be that way. And so we're going to dive in with strategies that really I learned through a ton of reading. I was in a business on Wall Street before that was called Fund of Funds, which is kind of like venture capital, where it's a high pace of meeting people. Relationships really matter. And then somewhere along the way in my career on Wall Street, I had this realization that networking was kind of like the wrong concept. You could just have genuine relationships with people you cared about. And then with time, whatever the benefits that one thinks come with networking, access, information, education, invitations, that they all seem to come once you had just started with that basic premise of just genuine relationships. So first things first, you will not hear me say the word networking for the rest of the presentation. I had to use it as a clickbaity headline to get you guys to sign up, but it's really what you're going to hear is friendship, relationship building, connections, human connections. All right. Let me just do a check-in to make sure that everyone can see things. Chat. Okay. All right, let's go back. All right. So the first principles of relationship building is it's actually not about you being me. It is really about the person in front of you and genuinely caring about that person and operating from a place of authenticity. I think that's the first mistake everyone gets wrong is they look at a conference list attendees, they look at Twitter, they look at LinkedIn, and they're like, that person can help me. You've already started from the completely wrong foot because again, it's about that human connection and the relationship. And so as you'll see, when we talk about this, so much of it is gonna center around being an authentic person, caring authentically. There's gonna be things like asking questions about people's families. And yes, I can tell you to ask questions about someone's families. You can write it down. You can have a system to write down the names. But at the end of the day, if you don't genuinely and authentically care about that person's family, they're gonna see right through you. And so I think it's a really important lens to look at relationship building through. And we'll see how one can do that. And again, if you have a genuine love for people and a genuine curiosity for people, then this stuff is actually really, really easy. Because there's no expectation in this, you can't even say, people would say this is the long game approach to networking, but I would say that's the wrong construct because as you'll see on our next slide, it's actually, you should do these types of behaviors even with nothing, with no expectation of anything in return. So before you start relationship building and you start some of these tactics that I'm going to describe to you, I encourage you to ask yourself, would I act this way? Would I do this thing if no one ever knew about it or nothing ever came about it? And this is actually an interesting life question. And I won't, we'll save that for a different conversation, but doing things without social signaling causes a lot of people to not do them, right? Think like the latest Malcolm Gladwell book. Someone might read that, but some part of it might be just to tell people that they read it. Might be 20%, 10%, might be 90%. Same question with relationship building. You have to really think about it like this. A tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it. Does the tree still fall? Yes. So the presentation is going to be broken down into three points, three parts, like prep before meeting someone, then the actual meeting, and then third is like systems to follow up. So before we go back into that, I'm just going to check to make sure that I don't have any questions from you guys. Any questions? Okay, cool. I'm going to keep going. I need to learn how to use this screen sharing stuff better. All right. So before the meeting, it is really important to understand network structures. And again, we're going to just skim the surface here, but a traditional network structure is cohesive or hierarchical. So that would be like the US government or a corporation, where the edges of the network kind of work upwards into a pyramid, and there's a lot of order and structure within it. Then there's distributed networks, like the ones that I currently find myself in as an entrepreneur, a solo entrepreneur, where you have there is no structure. And I would argue that the world is moving from a cohesive hierarchical network structure, if you think of like currency, to a distributed network structure, such as cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin. Again, you'll see that with what's happening with the Parkland kids, right? The traditional hierarchical structures of the newspapers and the NRA and the political parties is, maybe it's just a canary in the coal mine right now, but is really being challenged by the power of a small group of teenagers and the power of social media. The next thing to understand about networks is the power of weak ties. And there was this experiment, I'll put it in the show notes, but this is basically the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon game, that everyone is connected to Kevin Bacon via six degrees. And a weak tie is someone that like you went to high school with, but you were not necessarily friends with, or someone you meet at a conference. So they're a tie because they're in the same industry, but they're weak because you're not really friends. Weak ties are some of the most powerful sources of the powerful ways to connect into new networks and to add diversity and breadth into your network. Next, in networks, there are always these really powerful nodes, and they are called the super connectors. I ultimately hope that all of you listening will become super connectors one day. But the thing about super connectors is they're usually not people with the most power, formal power. Super connectors I've seen are like lawyers sometimes, or recruiters, people who really understand the nuances of relationship building. These are the super connectors. And you'd be surprised that some of the best deal flow, if you're an investor, might come from a lawyer who just happens to know all the investors or fund managers. Or it could be an accountant or a wealth manager. And again, these people, they have a special a joy in kind of understanding how networks work. Then there's shadow power. I think the good example of this is like the assistant to the CEO or the chief of staff. There are these kind of other kind of gatekeepers of power, or they're the decision maker behind the figurehead. I think it's always important to try to understand who those people are. And then this is a really fun thing, is like understanding the lineages. Like everyone has some kind of tribe. It could be a tribe through like what sport they played, or it could be like the Goldman Sachs diaspora or the PayPal mafia, or it could be this group that gets together and does spin on Saturday mornings. It's really, as you think about networks, it's really interesting to understand how these lineages are formed, because it can help you navigate and move around the different networks. I'm saying networks, but not networking. Now here I'm actually referring to the physical structure of the network. So before you start your relationship building, I would ask yourself, what gifts do you have to offer to someone else? And this can be time, expertise, inspiration, introductions. And I don't know the age demographic of the people on the call, but a lot of times, a lot of young folks ask me, they say, hey, I'm 18 years old, I'm 19 years old. I don't have expertise, I don't have introductions, I don't have inspiration. But this was actually a Bill Gates quote. He said, the thing I enjoy most about meeting with people who are much younger with me is that they have a perspective that I'll never have. It could be just an age perspective, like what Gen Z cares about. It could be a cultural perspective. Again, it could be an industry perspective where, again, take Bill Gates, say you work at an education nonprofit. Like Bill Gates cares a lot about education, but he doesn't necessarily have the lens of a nonprofit. So always remember that every single person has a unique perspective to share. How do you present yourself as you're looking to meet new people? This, I'm talking my own book a little, but I care a lot about kind of digital personal brands, because if you are introduced to someone, what's the first thing both of you do? You Google each other. And so wouldn't you want to control what people see? I'm a big fan of having at least cleaning up all your social profiles, especially LinkedIn, but also having like a site that's your name, khe.me or khe.com. Even if it's something as simple as like, hi, I'm Kay, I work here, these are some things I'm interested in, here are my social platforms. You want to really control, because that's what people are going to do. You want to control your public perception, again, from an authentic place. And I've talked about this ad nauseum, but blogging is an incredible form of leverage, because it's basically giving people a lens into your mind. And I've been working with a friend he's a trader, but he loves how football plays are called. And so he has a blog about football play calling. And he's really passionate about it. It's really good. I don't understand it. But you could imagine that right away it signals like passionate person, committed to putting his ideas out there, good writer. And then you'd be surprised. A lot of people actually do care about football and football play calling. And so that's a common point of interest. How do you decide who to meet? Again, you start with your gifts. What perspective do you have? What expertise do you have? Who would benefit from receiving them? And again, that's kind of taking the conventional thinking of networking, turning it upside down. But once you start from that place of helping someone first, you open up so much possibility. And if you do want to think about it from a network structure perspective, you are continuing to broaden those ties. Another thing to decide who to meet is to align along interests. Again, these are people that we're talking about, future friends, future mates. Two lawyers don't want to get together and talk about what it's like to be a lawyer, but if they're really passionate about CrossFit, they could talk about CrossFit till they're blue in the face. So don't think that just because you may be looking to grow professionally, that your interests should be discarded and all you should do is focus on your work. 1-degree connections are great for in-person meetings as a starting point. Alumni, friends of friends. If you have an area of interest that you want to grow, you could say like, hey, I know a lot about e-commerce because of this project I'm doing. You could say to a friend, is there anyone in your friend circle that is like a fun and curious person that would be interested in learning about my e-commerce perspective? And that person will know, they'll say like, oh, this person also really likes crypto. and the other person likes crypto, but they happen to work in e-commerce. So that's where the first degree connections will be really helpful. I think Twitter deserves its own special category, but Twitter is the network of shared interests. I mean, full stop. It is the place where people go to congeal, bad word choice, to congregate around their interests. And it is an incredible, incredible place to meet people. Half of my podcast guests are through Twitter. When I go to a new city, I meet friends through Twitter. I could not live without the connections on Twitter. But again, it starts with sharing, starts with being helpful, starts with like building up your portfolio of things you're interested in. All right, going to take a quick pause, check to see if we have any questions, and then I'll pop back in. All right, we're looking good. Cool. Let me pop back into our screen share. So now we're into the actual meeting. That header was wrong. I should say the meeting. How should you prepare? Definitely prepare. Google the person, see what they've read, try to understand their lineage. The fourth bullet point, like how did they end up where they ended up? Think about what questions you would want to ask them. Life transitions are a great great conversation starters. Why did you go from X to Y? Why did you choose to go to this college? Why did you choose to go to grad school? Those are really simple and easy curiosity-based entry points into a conversation. I like to prepare. I don't prepare a ton because it kind of primes me for what to expect about a person, but it definitely prepare. But don't be a creep. Don't say like, oh yeah, I saw you went on, yeah, like I saw you were like really enjoy Red Stripe because you saw a picture of them drinking a beer on their Instagram. And then try to infer like, what is it? What does this person care about? What are they interested in? And that's where I would think of preparation, really just putting yourself in the mindset of what would be the best and most interesting conversation to have with this person. About the logistics, approach them with humility. Especially if it's someone senior, you let them pick the time, pick the place. They're going to cancel a lot at the last minute. Just say yes, figure the rest out. If Bill Gates said, I want to meet with you, and it happens to be during your Monday morning meeting, like call in sick that day. Again, that's an extreme example, but especially with senior people, make sure that you fully accommodate them. And just as quick detail, I always confirm the night before and exchange phone numbers just in case there's like a logistical snafu. All right, this is one of my favorite parts of the presentation. When you're in the meeting, what do? Biggest problem, people talk too much. People love to hear the sounds of their own voice. When they're shy, they actually, it's easier to talk about yourself. And talking is easier than asking really good questions. So I always aim for a 90% listening ratio. And with that, it just comes down to asking really good, open-ended questions. Tell me about X. Why did you choose Y? What's interesting in X? For you millennials and Gen Zs on the call, eye contact is huge. If you break eye contact, especially to look at your phone should not even be in anywhere in the table. But breaking eye contact kills trust right away. It shows that you don't care. Don't do it. Memorization and paraphrasing. I'm going to write more about this in the show notes, but you don't want to bring a notebook usually, especially if it's informal, but you do, as we'll see in the systems, you do want to really kind of capture the essence of this person. Specifically, what are they interested in? How can you help them down the road? Again, kids' names, family situation, favorite football team, hobbies. Again, there are ways to do this using memorization. You can, for example, if someone tells you like their wife's name, her name is Janine, you could say like a little bit later in the conversation, like, oh, like when you and Janine did X, and that helps you remember that the name is Janine. Paraphrasing is kind of repeating back what people say, again, as a way to make them feel comfortable and make them feel heard. Also for memorization for yourself. Non-linguistic persuasion is, again, a whole science of if someone's leaning back on a chair, you try to emulate the way they carry themselves. If they're very kind of leaning forward, you lean forward. Again, these are psychological ways that are trust building. And again, I bet some of you are thinking like, whoa, this is super manipulative. And I would say it's not manipulative. These are tools that are given to humans. We should use them. If you're using them for disingenuous reasons, then it becomes manipulative. And then at the end, I would always ask how I can be helpful. I used to tell the young analysts that work for me this is not really directly related to relationship building, but could you pass the dinner table test? Which is, if you were at a table with really interesting people and you couldn't talk about work, did you have enough breadth of materials? Again, pop culture, politics, science, current events, to be interesting. And this is where kind of intellectual versatility really comes in. And as you get older, the dinner table test becomes much more important than like, are you really good at the narrow thing of your work? Again, because relationships are ultimately about the human connection and not about what job you both do. Follow up. Always send a thank you follow up email within 24 hours. I try not to be judgmental about this, but when I meet with someone who's junior and they don't thank me via email, it's very hard for me to let go. I love handwritten cards. I write a lot of handwritten cards. I try to write a couple per week, handwritten letters. Again, there's so much noise in an email inbox. When was the last time someone wrote you a personal letter? People remember that, especially if you say something nice and genuine. Like the third point, reference a couple things that were discussed in the meeting. Again, to show that you're paying attention, also as a kernel of ways you can help. And then, and again, from a place of authenticity, if you're just memorizing, this person really cares about this, like people are going to see through that. But if you're like, oh yeah, that's really cool that he's into, figure skating. I wouldn't have expected that, like, I wonder why, like, was his mom a figure skater, dad a figure skater, etc. And then propose the next meeting. This is, again, if there's a power imbalance, just to kind of ask for permission. Like, would it be okay if we reconnected in 6 months, 3 months? Always err on the side of too much time versus too little time, especially with senior people. After the meeting, all right, I'm going to do a quick check on the social, on the chat room. All right, looks like we're doing good. And I'm going to wrap this up so we have enough time for questions. We go back to the share. After the meeting, my second favorite part. How can I support? You should ask yourself this question. How can I support this person achieve their dreams? Especially if they were a good person, you guys just got along. Here's where it gets really quirky and scientific. And there's a lot of supporting materials on this, but effectively it's to create a system to find ways to help people in your group of friends. One easy way, categorize their interests. What skills do they have, or are they looking to cultivate? What sectors do they work in? But my two favorite, what are their hobbies and superpowers? Again, people are much more interested in talking about their passion for the NFL than they are about talking about being a patent litigator, patent law lawyer. So I really, and again, this comes from the curiosity. What are you interested in? How do you spend time on the weekends? What do you do with your kids? Take some notes. People love talking about their children. And so you could go a long way with kids' names. Associations are an easy way to remember names. I have a really good memory for names. And it's a really simple way. It's like, if I meet someone named Michelle, I'll say to myself, oh, who's a Michelle Michelle Obama. And then that person will always be associated with Michelle Obama. You'll never forget that her name's Michelle. Start thinking through your own group of friends who would be interested in meeting them, and then have a system to follow up. I try to ping all my friends a certain time, at a minimum once a year on their birthday, which Facebook will remind me about. But there are people who I try to reach out to. I have a group of 5 close friends that I try to send them a personal note, not handwritten, at least once a week. And then I have, old bosses that I try to reach out to them just to see how they're going, check in once a quarter. And there are a bunch of different tools. We could talk about this after. Full Contact is the one that I use, and I'll put that in the show notes. Oh, crap. That's the wrong slide. 10-tier relationships, just skip that slide. Consistency is everything. I once read this person who had an approach where it should say 525, 150, where once a week he tried to reach out to 5 people. Every 2 weeks he'd reached out to like 25 people, and over the course of a month he'd reach out to 50 people. Ari Emanuel, the famous agent, is known for making 300 phone calls a day. Again, that's overboard. That's his job. He's a Hollywood power agent, but that's something to keep in mind, that the consistency of checking in with people you care about and saying, hey, what do you need? How can I be helpful? What are you thinking about? And then my favorite, which is MBIs, which are mutually beneficial introductions. I try to make one of those one a day for a couple of years. So I've connected probably 1,500 pairs of people in my lifetime. And I've written about that as well, the details of it. And as you're doing this, think about ways in which you can accelerate serendipity. Really think about the network effect. If you bring 20 people into a room, that's 190 pairs of people. And there are ways to do that. Organizing dinners, small gatherings, really focusing on weak ties. So you might want to host a dinner, but don't invite all your alumni groups. Like invite one person from your high school, one person from your church, one person from your bowling league, one intern. Again, the more weak ties there are, the more, I call them serendipity explosions, the more you can really kind of catalyze serendipity. And create small email lists. Rad Reads, the email and newsletter, started out of this. It was just, how could I help these people? I like to read digital articles, a lot of them, over a breadth. So why don't I just send it to them? That was really me being in service to my community. And lo and behold, it turned into this, whatever this thing is called right now. So you could do that at a small scale, maybe 4 topics that you're interested in, and just keep a list of 10 to 15 people, always BCC so that people don't hijack your list. But you could also say, I send this email on crypto or on CrossFit every couple weeks when I see interesting articles. There are 20 of you on the list. If any of you want to meet each other, just let me know. And that's it. So for some reason it didn't save my, oh, sorry. No, it's not it. Few words of warning. Fake authenticity is completely transparent, especially millennials and Gen Z. They can see through BS so quickly. Be careful of burnout. You can't just give. You will flame out. Right now with 2 young kids, I've really pulled back my giving just because I have to give to them first. Be on the lookout for takers, people who really try to take advantage of you. You could just uninvite them to the party. You don't have to be mean to them or anything. Just say you know what? Your vibe doesn't align with mine. And then fight the tendency to just view people. I think it's very natural in a business world I find myself doing this even with my friends. Oh, how could this friend help me with this work project? Try to really disassociate yourself from that type of thinking. It's very hard. So here's a recap. You can read it for yourselves. I'd rather take questions, but I think my favorite thing here is the jet fuel to all of this is curiosity, empathy, and caring for people, caring for your fellow human mankind. And from that, if you are systematic, if you're an interesting person to be around, if you're curious, the power of your relationships will just magnify. Here's how you can help. Give us feedback, share these blog posts, the newsletter, and support us via Patreon. Thank you. I will now switch to Q&A. We got 7 minutes left. Does anyone have any questions? Hit me on the chat. questions? Thank you for your notes, Saul. While we're waiting to see if there's any questions, one thing, the systems that I created to really help me categorize the interests of the people in my network have been total game changer. There's probably, I use a tool called Full Contact, which basically plugs into Google that Gmail that basically gives you tags for people in your address book, and I tag people across 150 dimensions, and then I'm able to search really quickly. So if I see like I really care a lot about tattoos. I think tattoos are so cool. And I have probably 15 people in my network who really care about tattoos. And so if I see like a cool artist on Instagram, I'll just pull up real quickly, like who's interested in tattoos, and then send them that Instagram handle. Like, hey, check out this cool Instagram handle I found. And the thing is, like, I can normally remember 80% of the people, but I'm kind of OCD and anal. So I want like the full 20% to get it. All right, question. Superpowers. Can you talk a bit about those, how they came about, and the areas in which you classify people? So I will talk about great question, Nick. Superpowers are just the outliers of your in your group of friends. So for example, everyone has that friend who is like a walking Jeopardy, like trivia night expert, and so that's a very unique kind of person. They're usually really well read. They usually like a lot of history, and so I might tag that type of person as trivia night. And you know who that person is. Another superpower that I like is wanderlust. People who love to travel, and I love putting those people together because they'll say things like, "Oh, remember that little hostel in like somewhere off the coast of Thailand?" And right away, people are like, "I've been there. Did you eat at that fish shack next door?" And so those are some of the superpowers. I use this the prefix crazy, so it would be like crazy smart, crazy creative, crazy connector. And so people who are really like extreme, I think I would be a super connector in someone else's system, but everyone has that outlier group. And for the most part, when you put these outlier groups together, real amazing things happen. I have 4 minutes left. Question from Sam. Nick, hopefully that answered the question. What heuristic do you use for knowing who to meet at a conference within your framework? How do you suppress the urge to go to people based on their status and role? Well, that's a great question. There's nothing wrong with going to someone based on their status and role, just because you have it's just an easy marker. So for example, I love walking up to panelists at the end of the conference and just introducing myself. But again, it's through the lens of how can I help this panelist? What can I bring to them? Or just gratitude. Like, thank you for that panel. I learned a ton and I'm really grateful. In terms of the conference, like in terms of a meetup, like the cocktail hour, sometimes I will look for the stragglers that like seem to, the people who are like eating lunch by themselves. I might go to them. Or other times, I just literally just turn to my left or turn to my right. Obviously, if there are people that could be helpful, that you should not ignore the people that can be helpful, especially at a conference, because you're already there by special interest, right? So you already have that in common. So of course, if you're an app developer looking to get smart on apps, like look at people who work at the app companies. But once you approach them, don't do it from a place of transaction. I think that should cover it. Does that answer your question, Sam? Awesome. We got 2 more minutes. If anyone has a question, and I'm going to share this video. I'm going to share all the links that I referred to, and I'm probably going to create a series of blog posts off of this. Any other questions? We're down to a minute. I'm on the free version of Zoom because it's actually pretty expensive. It's like 20 bucks a month just to do one webinar. All right. Looks like we're good. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate all your support. Email me with any follow-up questions. And again, just tremendously grateful that you guys take the time to support the community, my work, these presentations, these webinars, and onwards. Have a nice long weekend.